Hey, Dusk here. So you may or may not have heard that last year has been re-released. So anyway, let's give you the too long didn't read the video. Is it worth playing? Absolutely, especially because it's free. Just go check it out on Steam and download it. But you probably want to know the good and the bad, so we're gonna go over everything in as much of an unbiased look as we can. If you're not familiar with last year, it is a 1 vs 4 asymmetrical horror game similar to Dead by Daylight, except the mechanics and gameplay loop actually match Left 4 Dead a little bit closer than they do Dead by Daylight. And that's because the fiends, or monsters, killers, whatever you want to call them, have really unique kits and they all have their own unique models and rigging, so this ends up giving you a lot more dynamic gameplay from, fiend to fiend to fiend, which is really interesting. Classmates are also class-based, so you've got assaults, medics, technicians, and scouts, as well as some perks you can plug in to change strengths and weaknesses to adapt to your playstyle. The core formula for last year is really solid and draws from games that have done really well in the past, like Left 4 Dead. Furthermore, they have a lot of fun maps that bring environmental damage to the forefront. You can set up grates that will break away so that students can fall a little ways and get cut off from their team, or fall a long ways and take fall damage, while some other maps feature things like bell towers that teens can be thrown off of. There's a lumber mill with giant buzzsaws. There's a mine shaft with mine carts that can run over you. You get the picture. Teens, of course, can use these against the fiend if there's a buzzsaw or a mine cart, and you can trick the fiend into stepping in front of those while they're trying to get you. Those things can kill the fiend. Which, yes, you can kill the fiend, so that's the next question. Can you fight back? Yes. There's a crafting system for the classmates, and they can make weapons and items so they can fight back and kill the fiend. The fiend can die any number of times. They get to come back no matter how many times you kill them. But the classmates are the same way. No matter how many times you kill them, they get to keep coming back. However, there is a round timer, so the classmates do need to work on progressing objectives, and that's the next thing we're going to talk about. The gameplay loop is objective-based. Instead of sitting on a generator or sitting on an objective or sitting in any one location for a long period of time, you're typically moving around the map, collecting scrap, which is your base material for all crafting, but you're also collecting objectives, which might be a gas can, a giant gear, or maybe trying to turn a crank or carry a gas can to a lock so that you can cut it. Just a lot of different various things that you're going to have to do. This means that you're always moving around the map and interacting with different parts of the map and giving the fiend opportunities to break up your group as well, or catch a would-be straggler who decided to break off so that they could get some more scrap for something that they wanted to craft. And this is where last year shines. It seems like you pretty much always get to do something cool. Even if you're playing Fiend and you get run over really hard by classmates and they all escape, you're probably going to get a few really fun kills on the way. Unless you're just like brand new to Fiend and you went against like a fully stacked veteran survivor team. Yeah, you're probably not going to get much done, but that's because last year is also a fairly skill-based game. There's a lot to learn, both from the Fiend and from the classmate perspective. So as you can tell, last year's got a lot of really good things going on for it. But what about the bad? Well, it's got plenty of bad as well. As you can tell by the thumbnail, this is like the third time they've released. First, they tried to release on the Discord store, but then the Discord store itself basically crashed and burned. That killed some of its hype and momentum. They re-released on Steam. The Steam launch ultimately failed, though, due to lack of player retention. This was largely due to the fact that new players had a mechanic that was really punishing to them, something called ambushes. Ambushes are basically these invisible circles that are scattered around the map, and if you don't have the map memorized so you know where they all are, you step into them and instantly die. Veteran players weren't really retained very well due to lack of engagement tools. Once you finished up the relatively short progression, there was no ladder. And last year has a pretty competitive player base, and something like a ladder was definitely needed. And now we're back again, where we're trying to resurrect last year, but this time it's a different dev studio, so we've got some new leadership in charge. I'm pretty optimistic for Undaunted Games. But to continue on with the negative, because we're trying to be unbiased here, with this re-release, their first objective was just to get the game back online, just to get it up, get it running, get players back into the loop, and then continue the development cycle. This means they had to resurrect an old build. The game does not have its servers up, which means we went back to a peer-to-peer network setup, which is not great. It means if you're playing Fiend and your internet connection sucks, your survivors are probably just going to randomly disconnect from you. The game is also pretty rough around the edges. There are a few bugs here and there, things that were left over by the previous dev team. It is definitely a very skill-based game, and that means there's learning curves, and some of the other things is like the high-end balance could use some work. It's actually not bad. The balance is pretty decent, and then some of the other things, there's a few camera bugs and glitches, there's some FPS drops, some optimization in certain parts of some maps that are a little rough, you know, and little things like that that you're going to notice as you play. But I feel like the sheer fun that you have in the rest of the game drastically outweighs a lot of the negatives. But that brings us to the final point that I want to kind of make. Again, they've made the very smart decision to set up last year to be free to play. This pretty much ensures that we're going to get a decent influx of players as long as people realize that the game exists. There's not really been any advertising yet, so a lot of people don't realize the game is out. But it is a blast, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it, so you should definitely check it out. And, you know, worst case scenario, you don't like it, it's free to play, you're not really out anything. I'll be streaming the game a lot on Twitch and YouTube, so keep an eye out for my streams and more videos if you want to see more about last year. We'll see you then.